April 24th, 2013. Elizabethton, Tennessee. In the mysterious corners of the internet, some relish in the opportunity to remain in the shadows. Within the website of 4chan, many users use this as that opportunity. A messaging board where every user remains anonymous can be a scary idea. Even scarier when the thought of someone even more devilish could be lurking among the posts. In 2013, a mysterious user would lead users of 4chan on some type of strange and disturbing scavenger hunt. One in which a user of the website would supposedly go on to do the scavenger hunt, only to never be heard from again. Today on Unblurring the Unknown, we explore a topic that is equal parts true crime as it is internet mystery. We explore the posts leading up to the disappearance of someone only known as Alex from 4chan, and whether or not this could truly be the work of a nefarious serial killer stalking the dark corners of the internet for victims. Or perhaps this being some type of prank or scam or even freaky ARG. Today on Unblurring the Unknown, we explore the mystery that is the vanishing of Alex from 4chan. Welcome back to Unblurring the Unknown. As always, I am your host, Dominic. And if you were checking out this show, if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, I first want to say thank you for checking the show out. If you were listening on Spotify, please turn on post notifications so you get notified every time I post a new episode. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. It helps me out within the algorithm, and I greatly appreciate it. And while you're at it, feel free to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Unblurring the Unknown as well. Follow me on all those places, and I greatly appreciate it. And feel free to share this show with anybody else who shares the same love for true crime, the unknown, conspiracy theories, everything like that, like you and I do. Now, today on the show, we have a very strange and unique mystery. We have someone going online to perhaps a very questionable part of the internet and goading members of this website into hunting for a quote-unquote prize, while posting very weird and disturbing images and basically leading people into a game of sorts, only for someone to actually do it and then mysteriously never be heard from again on 4chan. Now, this is a very strange case, and prior to this episode, I have heard kind of little bits and pieces about this topic. However, my background is very limited on it, and I'm not going to lie, a part of me loves these kind of strange little internet mysteries because they never cease to fascinate me with the extent that some of these go, and the amount of people that try to solve these types of cases, and kind of the mystery and uniqueness of them. You know, it really draws me in, and I love it. However, before we dive into the meat of this week's episode, we need to discuss what 4chan is, as it plays a huge role into our story today. Now, some of you listening might be familiar with 4chan. 4chan is an image board / messaging board where users can post images and discuss various topics. Now, on the surface, it is much like Reddit. However, where 4chan differs is that all of the users remain anonymous, unless they choose to identify themselves, of course. Now, this has led to a variety of kickbacks, most with the idea of when people remain anonymous on the internet, some pretty stupid and equally controversial things take place. Many of these 4chan boards are filled with hateful messaging, slurs, and all sorts of things like that. And many people feel like they can say these things because they are hiding behind a computer screen and being completely anonymous in doing so. Now, a lot of these boards on 4chan have dedicated topics to them, much like Reddit, but some are just sounding boards for random information. Another thing about 4chan that I did not know is that posts on 4chan actually have an expiration date, so conversations don't get kind of saved and archived like they do on Reddit. Very commonly, and in like the case we're going to cover, a majority of the conversations, like I mentioned, they get lost after a period of time, leaving many topics and conversations to just eventually die out on 4chan when nobody replies to them. Now that we have that little background on what 4chan is, as that is kind of the whole, I would say, setting for where our story takes place, let's now detail this story that is Alex from 4chan, and this story that predominantly takes place on this site, although it does take place in Elizabethton, Tennessee, and I know that sounds fake, but that's actually the name of the town. It's Elizabethton, Elizabeth, and then T-O-N. Kind of sounds like one of those, it kind of sounds made up, and it's kind of funny, but it takes place on 4chan, and then Elizabethton, Tennessee, which I have no idea where it is, but it seems like a nice place, with the exception of this story, of course. Now, our story begins in April of 2013. On the random subgroup on 4chan, a user would post an image of a snapshot from Google Earth and an image of an abandoned industrial area in Tennessee. The post stated, and I quote, "By this rubble, your prize awaits, Tennessee Amons. Park nearby and walk to this point for the secret. It's under plastic at this point. Good luck." Now, the post also contained a map and coordinates that lead to the entrance of these kind of series of warehouse-like buildings that are visible in the photo. And you can kind of see three of them. They're parallel to each other, kind of like 1, 2, 3. And the coordinates lead to these. They kind of look like warehouses. They also kind of look like bunkers. And throughout the sources that I've checked, I've seen them be called different things based on where I looked. But moral of the story, you had this user come out and pretty much try to rope these users of 4chan into some type of scavenger hunt, and many online were extremely hesitant, because of course they would be. Other users would begin commenting on the photo about what the anonymous poster could be referring to, and what they had put in this spot and was calling a prize. People would reply and speculate. Most think that this could have been a dead body or something like that. Some other comical and outlandish takes were thrown out there. However, no one would directly respond to the OP, or the original poster, about coming to find this quote-unquote prize. Now, after 18 minutes would go by, the anonymous poster would post again and say, and I quote, "No one shall claim the prize. Time to try other websites." OP now at this point would continue to taunt the users on this message thread and state why no one was coming to claim this prize before posting a picture along with a post stating, and I quote, "Little friend, fly away. Why is no one coming? See?" And attached a photo. And in this photo would be what looks to be a picture of a badly decomposing hand or leg from some type of animal. Now, this would kind of put a majority of the users on this 4chan thread on edge. A lot of people thought that this person was bluffing, and that whatever decomposing animal this was, that it was merely the OP trying to play some sick joke and just happened to pull this photo from somewhere off the internet. Users would try to reverse image search this photo that OP shared, trying to see if perhaps whoever this person is, that they are bluffing, and happened to find this photo on the internet as opposed to taking it themselves. However, when they did this, no search results pulled up, meaning that the photo was real, and that OP took the picture themselves. This would further spread concern that whoever was trying to get people to play this game and claim this quote-unquote prize was legit and was real. 10 minutes later, the OP, who would be later gone on to be identified merely by the identification, the 4 letters of the identification number of the account. So, again, I talked in the beginning of the episode that 4chan keeps everybody anonymous. So, the OP in this instance was obviously anonymous. But this mystery, as this mystery is kind of developed, they started calling the original poster 2Q8E, as that is the first 4 digits of the user ID that was attached to this account, obviously. So through the remainder of the story, the OP, as I was just calling them, is now going to be known as 2Q8E. Just to reiterate that and make sure you're all following along with me. 10 minutes later, 2Q8E would post again and would post another image to go along with it. It was very strange, and in the photo it appeared to be some type of decomposing remains of something. However, it looks pretty hard to make out. A user who was on this 4chan thread would comment and say something along the lines that this quote-unquote prize that 2Q8E was speaking of could be the remains of whatever was in the photo that they shared to 4chan. 2Q8E would respond to this claim about the decomposing quote-unquote, body or animal parts or something being the prize, and they would respond and say that that was not the prize, and comment back again and state quote-unquote plastic prize in response, and then attach another photo of this kind of black trash bag or black industrial bag, whatever you want to make of it, and there was something inside of it. Now, of course, from the photo, you can't tell what is inside of it, but then at this point, you can kind of understand kind of the level of creepiness that was going on within this thread, because again, you don't know if this person's real, you don't know if they're fake, and you are, at this point, they're saying that like, oh no, there's not animal remains or maybe even human remains the prize, it's a plastic prize, and it's whatever is in this creepy black industrial trash bag. So, again, very creepy up to this point, very ominous, and people really didn't know what to make of it at this point. Now, the photo in question of the black trash bag or industrial bag looked like it'd be taken within kind of an old basement or warehouse of some sorts. And users on the 4chan thread and kind of following along with this mystery would start to realize that these photos that were being shared within these string of posts being made by 2Q8E were from inside of the warehouse building that they provided coordinates for. This would be further adding fuel to the fire that, of course, no one should go to the coordinates of these warehouses because of the implications. At this point, people would start to wildly speculate that 2Q8E could have been some type of strange, disturbed person, or even perhaps a serial killer. Now, 2Q8E would go on to post 2 more photos to this message board, while still goading on the comments section to try to get someone to show up. The first photo they would share would be a mostly black image, and it would be virtually impossible to make out what was truly in the photo. The second photo would be a handwritten note that read, "Please come 24th of April, 2013. They would post again to the message board and state, "Singing tonight, someone come." And share another photo of what we have to assume is 2Q8E's hand holding a small piece of paper in front of the trash bag, and they would also be holding kind of a small flashlight as well. This would kind of seem to be like a location confirmation, if you ask me, that these pictures weren't being sent from somebody who was not currently in the area. It was kind of like, hey, I took this picture, I have this little flashlight, I have this little piece of paper with the message on it, and I'm in front of this black trash bag currently. Again, I kind of interpreted that as kind of like a confirmation, like, hey, I am here. If you come to this location, I am here. However, that's just my personal interpretation on it. Now, again, after trying again to try and get people to come to this warehouse and claim this so-called prize, 2Q8E would suddenly stop posting after this last post, leaving the comment section at this point to debate about what could possibly be going on here. Most decided that they would not attempt to go here under any circumstances if this, in fact, was real and that this guy was not some type of prank or anything like that. Now, like I said, most decided they would not attempt to go here under any circumstances if in the seldom case that this was real. Of course, they were hotly debating whether or not that this could have been some type of scam, prank, maybe this was an ARG of some point, or even if this could be an actual serial killer or a real mentally, kind of not mentally sane individual. Now, theories would go back and forth. However, they would not get any developments with this creepy 4chan poster, aka 2Q8E, until a few days later. Now, this would be when Alex, as in Alex from 4chan, finally comes into play. About 5 days after the anonymous the anonymous post, I should say, by 2Q8E would stop, Alex would jump on the random themed message thread, the same that 2Q8E shared on, and share a post along with a photo to go with it. The post would read, and I quote, "Alex from Tennessee here. I'm at the location of Creepy Guy. Came early." And he would attach a photo to this post, and this would end up being a photo of what would look like to be an extremely dark basement or cellar type area. Alex would update 4chan and take photos while he explored this warehouse cellar-esque area. Now, this was as close as you could get to Alex basically live streaming what he was doing without actually recording himself. He was sending pictures to the thread left and right about what he was seeing and replying to commenters, all while exploring. Now, these little tidbits of Alex investigating and in the speed in which he did so will come back up later in our theories section, so keep that in the back of your mind for now. So Alex would continue to upload photos, some of a stairway, a wooden doorway, and as he got deeper into this basement that was discarded, or that was full with discarded scrap material, it had a dirt floor, there was other materials strewn all about through the basement, and of course Alex was taking pictures left and right and sending these to the 4chan thread. Then Alex would find the black plastic trash bag, which we have to assume is the one shared in the photo by 2Q8E just a few days prior, and was referenced that this so-called prize was inside. Now, Alex, being probably a dumbass, would open the trash bag and take photos about what he would find inside. Now, what Alex would find inside of the black trash bag looked like the mummified remains of some type of small animal, as well as a paper plate with a scribbled message on it. Upon looking further at this paper plate, it would be folded in half, and inside of the paper plate would be a hard drive of some sort. Now, Alex would of course take pictures of all of these and share them to the thread. Now, at this point, Alex would move the black trash bag, and underneath it would be some type of hole dug slightly into the dirt below. Now, while continuing to sift through this black trash bag, it actually kind of seemed like inside of the black trash bag that there was kind of bags within bags kind of twisted together inside of the original trash bag, if that makes sense. So there was a whole bunch of objects, and they were all kind of like individually wrapped or kind of like stuffed inside of each other and things like that. So Alex was just kind of unraveling what was inside of this huge black trash bag and the smaller bags inside of it, and everything that was kind of, again, inside of this bag, and just trying to sift through it, and he kept digging through it. Now, eventually, and again, like I mentioned, he's continuously posting throughout this entire thing. So as he's unwrapping more bags and uncovering more objects from inside of this large black trash bag, he's replying to people on 4chan, he's posting all the pictures he can, like, he's going, like I said, to the extent of almost live streaming this entire thing without actually doing it, or at least the 2013 equivalent of live streaming. Now, eventually, Alex would uncover what looked to be a kind of foam workout mat by the looks of it that was stuffed inside of one of the bags that was stuffed inside of the trash bags. Now, when Alex would unroll this foam mat, a possum would dart out of it and run to the other side of the basement. Now, Alex would state in the 4chan thread that this possum looked extremely malnourished and almost like it had been tortured to some degree, and he was uncertain about how long it was wrapped up for. Now, at this point, you would think that the clues present in this basement would be enough to freak any normal person out, and that whatever was going on here was, or down here, was some truly odd shit. But instead, Alex kept exploring and updating 4chan while he did so. Alex would post again, this time of what appears to be pill bottles on a shelf, and said that some of the bottles' dates on them were even older than he was. He would post again and state that he heard a car nearby, and take a picture of another rolled up mat-looking object, and state, and I quote, "WTF is this?" in the 4chan thread. Now, this is kind of where doubts would start to creep in about Alex's story, but again, I will save that until the very end. Now, Alex would continue posting, all while the possibility of there being someone else there with him would be in the back of his mind, we only have to assume. Now, Alex would continue uploading, and he would upload an image of an old mailbox, complete with some dumb dead animal matter inside of it, as well as a small crawl space he had found in the basement. Alex would state that he had thought a window was in the back area of this crawl space, and that he could use this as a getaway plan rather than the door he used to enter the warehouse originally. Now, at this point, Alex would think that this would be perhaps the best way out of the basement in the event that someone was there with him, and he would post again and claim that he could quote-unquote hear the fucker. Now, we have to assume that the person who would be there outside in kind of the car that Alex heard pull up would be 2Q8E, as we don't have any other inclination as to who this could be outside of this warehouse. Alex would follow this crawl space in an effort to try to get out of this basement, and when he would make it to the end, he would find out that there was in fact not a window at the end, but instead some type of vent, and that he could not exit that way, and instead had to go out the wood doorway he had entered in originally. Now at this point, that would be the last photo posted to the 4chan thread that Alex would ever make. It would be this photo of the vent that he thought was a window, and that was the last thing he would ever post, leaving many who were following along with this story and with Alex's posts with questions about what could have happened to Alex, and if in fact perhaps he was attacked by this 2Q8E figure and killed. However, this is not where the story ends. When Alex stopped posting, many online from this 4chan thread started to retrace Alex's steps on 4chan about his previous posts in connection with this strange warehouse that 2Q8E wanted someone to go to. Towards the end of the thread, some users started to post what they could find from Alex's previous posts leading up to this point when he would take the trip to the warehouse. Now, in previous posts that people were able to uncover leading up to this day, Alex would say that he would encounter a strange guy while on a trip to Walmart. This stranger in particular would ask Alex if he went on 4chan at all, and Alex stated that he did, and this creepy stranger would tell him to meet at 11 p.m. that night behind the Walmart. Alex would hop on 4chan and ask other users on 4chan whether or not he should do it, and someone had commented on people started to comment on the recent strange posts by 2Q8E and stated that maybe perhaps this creepy guy and 2Q8E could be related in some way. This would be further confirmed when the coordinates provided for Alex to meet this so-called creepy guy would be the same coordinates for the warehouse that was provided in the image that was initially shared by 2Q8E, and it appears that these sets of abandoned warehouse-like buildings were behind this Walmart that Alex went to and met the stranger. So, pieces of the puzzle are starting to connect here a little bit, and we're starting to build a better understanding of this story entirely and possibly a relationship before Alex going to the warehouse between himself and this creepy stranger, who we have to only assume is 2Q8E. Now, at the end of this discussion thread, other users would state that Alex should go, but should bring something to defend himself, and Alex would state that he would bring a baton and a switchblade to defend himself. Now, personally, if it was me, I'd bring a gun. But, again, that's me. I ain't taking any chances whatsoever. Especially once you go back and you consider when you investigate the timestamps of the photos that Alex took within the warehouse, he went in the middle of the night. And again, the timestamps will come back up here later in the episode, but the timestamps were taken at nighttime. So, Alex, my man, why are you going to this abandoned warehouse with possibly a serial killer there in the middle of the night to begin with? And without possibly having something else, like maybe he brought something to defend himself, but I bring a gun. If you're going to go in the middle of the night, bring a gun. Like, you're in Tennessee. Like, that's not, that area has guns. Like, it's not like there's a gun shortage. It's not like we're in England, So there's definitely guns there. So bring a gun, especially if you're going to go in the middle of the night. But again, that's just me, and I'm getting a little bit off topic here. Now, 4chan users were actually able to dig up another post in which Alex would post a photo to 4chan of this creepy stranger that he met at the Walmart, who again, many assume, and like myself assumes, that this is 2Q8E. And while it is not the best photo that Alex provided, because why would it be a good photo? It is kind of a side profile taken of a man inside of an older model truck, and it seems to be taken from the perspective from Alex inside their vehicle. So basically the picture is taken through two sets of car windows. Now the photo shows a middle-aged white man wearing a baseball hat, glasses, and having a beard. Now whether or not this is truly 2Q8E, we don't know that for certain. But the way the story is played out in the information that we do have, it would be safe to make that assumption. Now, in one of the threads that would pop up post Alex's journey to the abandoned building, and when he would stop posting, 2Q8E would supposedly come out of the woodwork and start posting again. this time leaving eerie clues behind, suggesting Alex met an untimely fate that day he ventured into the warehouse. The original post made by 2Q8E when he supposedly resurfaced got lost to time, but some users had summarized what he said and reposted it to the 4chan thread as, and I quote, "Pics of plate." Wrote, "I will show you more 30th April alive." He said that Alex is good fret. We'll timestamp a photo of him if we solve the puzzle. Posted the clue. Now, let me summarize this if that did not make a lot of sense to those of you listening. 2Q8E would seemingly post a post claiming that Alex was still alive and that he was a good friend and that proof of life would be provided if those online solved a puzzle that he would attach to the 4chan thread. Now, the clue that 2Q8E would post and what is referred to in these posts would be an audio file and a set of audio files that would be uploaded to a site called Vocaroo, which were also, unfortunately, lost to time. But before that, people were able to record these clues and upload them to SoundCloud so they would not be lost to those who want to try to unravel the mystery. Now, the first audio file that was uploaded to Vocaroo sounds mostly like running water with some type of language accompanying it that is foreign in nature. Now, some keen-eye 4chan users were able to come to the conclusion that the language being spoken in this clue was Icelandic and posted it to a separate Icelandic 4chan thread to see if they could get a translation. They would get a rough translation back, and this was what was said within the clue shared by 2Q8E. "Find you will not, but seek you will try. Buried behind the fence with skulls he will lie." Now, this, on the surface, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. However, later on, 2Q8E would post a photo to 4chan, and it looks to be some type of farm area where there is a fenced-in area with a couple small trees within a garden. Now, users assumed at this point, based on the clue that they had deciphered, and regarding the fence and the skulls, they had that perhaps Alex was killed by 2Q8E and buried at this kind of fenced-in area, and that the puzzle that they were trying to solve could have simply been where Alex's body was discarded. Now again, this cannot be confirmed. However, that seems to be what 2Q8E is implying by the post of kind of this little garden and fenced-in area. Now, 2Q8E would then post again. This time, he would post another cryptic message, and that be almost kind of coded in sorts, with some words and numbers, and this kind of seems to be another portion of this riddle he is trying to get users to solve. Now, after this, and after 2Q8E would post this riddle, this other clue, he would go dark, and would not be heard from again on the thread. Many online thought that this could be a phone number of some sort hidden within this strange kind of number in worded message that 2Q8E shared. However, based on what I could find in my research, it doesn't seem like anybody found it out. And nobody could decipher whatever this clue, or the second clue, that 2Q8E shared. And it kind of seemingly went cold. Now, some sleuthers tried to figure out and kind of tried to piece together what they did have, and they tried to get Walmart security camera footage from the Elizabethton, Tennessee Walmart, and even called a local vision center to see if they had any footage of either 2Q8E, and it kind of ended up as dead ends. Now, at this point, it kind of seemed like everything would go cold. That is, until someone decided to post this entire story of Alex from 4chan and 2Q8E to the r/4chan group on Reddit. Now, at this point, the story would blow up to a much wider audience than it originally had on 4chan. Reddit would do what Reddit does and take the story and run with it, and they would start their own discussions on what could have happened to Alex. However, what would come of this is that a Redditor and his friends would actually decide to visit the location provided, aka the abandoned warehouse, as they had lived nearby, and when they would go and they would venture with a couple of their friends, they would of course go in the daytime. Alex, jeez, you're not gonna live that one down. They would venture to this abandoned warehouse, and they would take a swath of photos about what they would find inside. Most of which looked like discarded industrial trash, electrical parts, and really nothing to note. However, they did not uncover anything suspicious, and it did not seem like there was anything of note within this warehouse bunker thing, or whatever you want to call it, and they definitely didn't find any black trash bags or anything like that. Now, at this point, and after this little investigation done by this Redditor who lived nearby, this led to some doubting the overall story in general from 2Q8E and whether or not Alex was even a real person. Someone would post on this thread as well that Alex's behavior during their exploration of the abandoned area was suspicious. Alex, of course, would constantly upload what he had seen and interacted with, and posting, all while exploring this unknown area. They would refer to the timestamps of the posts made by Alex, and there was roughly a 20-second window in between the picture being uploaded to 4chan and the post being made, meaning that Alex uploaded the photo to 4chan, made the comment to go along with the post, passed a CAPTCHA check to prove that he was not a robot, and posted all within 20 seconds. And this similar pattern would be followed for the majority of the posts made by Alex. Meaning that if Alex was in fact in this area, which of course we need to note that he did not have any prior knowledge of being in, while also exploring it and posting constantly, this would mean that Alex would A, be constantly glued to his phone, and B, weirdly interactive considering where he was claiming to be, and in the panic nature of how he worded his posts. Now, if Alex was truly panicked about the idea of being there, would he really have been posting virtually non-stop for the entire time he was there? Now, this seems very unlikely. Of course, not impossible, but very unlikely. I know if I was perhaps venturing an area that I had never been to, and I'm trying to interact with somebody or shoot somebody a text, I'm certainly not going to be texting every 20 seconds, especially after I claim to hear a car and that somebody's nearby. I'm done at that point. I'm going to try and find a place to hide. I'm not going to be constantly posting almost nonstop when now I think that there's a creepy guy, a serial killer possibly in the area. I'm getting out of there. I'm not continuing to post. I'm not continuing to hang out. I'm not doing any of that. So the pure rate in which Alex posted, coupled with the idea that kind of his wording was panicked, makes people think that maybe he wasn't really as panicked because this was made up, that this did not happen. However, again, we will dive into theories. However, people thought again, the rate in which Alex posted was incredibly suspicious. Now, some people did come to the defense of Alex and discovered that the photos taken by 2Q8E and the photos taken by Alex were taken with different cameras, as the cropping ratio was different on the photos that were posted by 2Q8E. However, this could be done simply by using two separate cameras, and this still could be done by one person, although it does add some tiny shreds of credibility to the idea that these in fact were two separate people, and that this story truly happened. Now, perhaps the biggest evidence that supports the idea that this story is not real, because, keep in mind, we do not have any physical evidence to support the fact that this is a real story. All we have are internet posts, all of which are not genuine evidence to support that someone is missing or that this entire thing is factual. So again, keep that in mind. The biggest evidence against this story being real is that we don't have any record of any missing persons cases regarding someone named Alex going missing in Elizabethton during this time. We do not have, in fact, have anyone reported missing in the Elizabethton area during this time period from what I could find listed on the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's website of missing children and adults. There are no active missing persons reports from Elizabethton during the time period of mid to late April 2013. In additional searching I did on the internet, I also turned up empty in regards to any disappearances in Elizabethton during this time period. So again, I did not find anything on Tennessee.gov, nor anywhere else that I searched. Now, with that being said, again, I oftentimes, and you hear me say it, those of you who have listened to the show for quite a long time, I am a skeptic at heart. I am a big fan of kind of the theory of Occam's razor. The most likely explanation is probably what happened. Now, the fact that there is no physical evidence to go along with this story makes a lot of people doubt it. Now, again, you might call me lame or whatever, boring, for not going with probably the most outlandish theory here, saying that maybe this entire story was real and that there could be a serial killer in Elizabethton, Tennessee, and that they are using the internet to stalk their victims and try to lure them in. I get it. That sounds cool. Not cool, but that's a neat idea to kind of perpetuate and believe in. That's a neat idea because people love the true crime and the idea of a serial killer. People love to associate things with serial killers. So I get that. But the reality is that you have this entire collection of creepy internet posts made by 2Q8E and by Alex, none of which have any physical evidence to go along with them besides the posts. We don't have any of the items that were shown in the photos. It's not like we have any of those in our hands. There's no tangible evidence to support that. And in addition to that, the only tangible evidence that we might be able to have that could corroborate the existence of this story would be Alex himself, or herself, but we have to assume himself. But again, everywhere I saw referred to him as himself, so I digress. We don't have anything affiliated to an Alex going missing in Elizabethton, Tennessee during this time period. And you could say, well, maybe they used an alias. Maybe Alex was just an alias. No, there is nobody who was reported, and I mean nobody named Alex, or anybody else for that matter, going missing in Elizabethton, Tennessee during that time period. Now, you could also say, well, maybe, they were a loner, or they didn't have any family. I think there's a certain amount of time when somebody could be missing before somebody realizes they're missing. In the cases that I've discovered, even in the cases I've covered, when it is involving a missing persons case, and even if they're regarded as a little bit of a loner and they're living without no family, eventually it becomes a point where somebody realizes they're missing. Whether it's a friend, an employer, a coworker, whatever it is, somebody makes that assumption. They put two and two together. So if somebody were to go missing, and in this case Alex, if they were able to go missing and nobody reported them missing, that is a big question mark, and that's a problem. Because if this indeed did happen, and Alex magically went missing one day and nobody had filed a missing persons report, I find that very, very hard to believe, especially considering, and if you want to make the case that they're a loner, you're referring to that maybe if they had a job, their boss didn't say anything, their friends didn't say anything, their coworkers didn't say anything. There's a whole lot of hoops you got to jump through here, and a lot of it doesn't make any sense. But again, there is no person going missing in Elizabethton, Tennessee during this time period of April 2013, which casts, I guess, the biggest blanket of doubt over this entire story, as tempting to believe it as it possibly is. But with that all being said, and me kind of venting there a little bit about kind of my own personal thoughts, let's go into some theories here, and let's discuss kind of our options we have when it comes to the case of Alex from 4chan. Now, our first theory here is aptly titled Prank or Scam. Now, this would be that this is some type of prank or scam, like many users of 4chan initially thought. Now, I kind of doubt this theory, as throughout the events that unfold, it seems like 2Q8E is fishing for responses and wants people to interact with his posts. If it were just kind of mindlessly throwing spammy content out there and kind of just dumping all of this information at once, maybe I can see the idea that maybe this is some sort of prank and scam. But this seems very elaborate and played out over multiple days. Between the original posts, the arrival of Alex, and then the post by 2Q8E afterwards, this was well thought out, and it would be done by one person or perhaps two people working together. However, just because of how elaborate it was, I don't simply think that this was a prank or scam. Now, our second theory is called ARG. Now, ARGs are something that we've talked about on the show before. Now, if you do not know what an ARG is, ARG stands for Alternate Reality Game, which most commonly is a game created by someone that takes place within the real world while pulling elements from storytelling. Now, it is a form of media that tells a story within the world we live in, and oftentimes people use these to create strange cryptic stories, often with twists and turns that make it seem real, when in reality it is not, and they are really trying to get people to follow along and interact with the story as it takes place. Now, this theory would mean that someone has created this entire story and made it to be played like an ARG through the 4chan message boards, trying to get people to play this game and solve this puzzle and provide all of these clues that 2Q8E, gave throughout this entire incident taking place. It just screams ARG. Now, those who support the idea of this theory cling to the idea that Alex was in fact made up by the author of this entire game, and he was merely a character inside of the game that was used, of course, when no one would actually show up to the site of the warehouse. Because who actually would? If some creepy guy posts cryptic messaging and kind of says, hey, come to this location, you got to know nobody's actually going to show up. So Alex, in a sense, was made up as a character to play this game and to pose as an actual 4chan user who actually kind of made the hypothetical leap to go and actually explore this warehouse. Now, the author of the game, again, could have guessed that this was going to happen because, of course, again, who would show up to some creepy place with the chance of meeting some random stranger who may or may not be a killer? Like, no one is doing that. So Alex, again, was made up as the guinea pig in this case, and then the author then made it seem like Alex was killed when nobody on 4chan could figure out the coded messages and phrases that 2Q8E was sending along, this would in turn kind of kill the game through no fault of its own. Now, no one could figure out this last clue, and of course, no one was going to try and track down the real-life locations of this story that was taking place out of fear that this shit could have actually been real. But again, if you like this theory, when no one could figure out the clues sent over by 2Q8E, the game died and got lost to time. Because, of course, 4chan has a timer on it. When people stop interacting with posts, eventually the posts are going to disappear and get lost. Now, of course, these posts are preserved by those who found the story very odd and strange and anonymous, but when people would stop playing the game, it would just die out. When people could not solve the riddle, they lost interest in it. And again, nobody's actually going to go to any of these real areas or try to solve the puzzle in the real life because, again, you don't know if this is real. You don't know if this is real. You don't know if this is fake. You don't know what's going on. So in your head, you're like, hey, I'm not actually going to try and figure this out. I'm going to try and figure this out through like the clues that are presented, but I'm not actually going to put boots on the ground because if this story is real, Alex is dead and I don't want to be dead either. And I don't want to be killed. So to me, I like this theory the most. I think this is probably my personal favorite theory. And just simply because people stopped engaging with, 2Q80 or the author in this case, the game just died out and people just lost interest and they couldn't figure it out. And perhaps he made the clue too hard and that's why people couldn't figure it out. And through basically making it too hard, he killed the game for himself, or he or she killed the game for themselves because people just lost interest. And of course, it's 4chan. So it just died out. Now, our last theory here is that Alex was real. And of course, this theory is exactly how it sounds. That Alex was a real person and met an untimely end at the hands of 2Q8E, and that 2Q8E is some type of serial killer stalking the corners of the internet for his victims. Now, while this is perhaps at face value what took place, diving deeper into the story like we have has shown us that that is virtually impossible. It does not make sense, nor is there any evidence to support that either of these people, Alex or 2Q8E, are real, or are even different people. And because of that, it makes the story incredibly hard to believe. With no evidence of any missing persons taking place within this time period, and the follow-up visit to the site conducted by some Redditors taking some initiative and then finding nothing, leads us to believe that this story was fake, and most likely made up, as I believe, as some type of ARG that the author wanted us to follow along with and solve. However, because of 4chan's algorithm, it kind of bit him in the ass, so to speak, and things deleted after a period of time. So eventually, the story died out, and the ARG and whatever the ending had in store for those who were trying to solve it eventually died with time. However, in conclusion of today's episode, while the story of Alex from 4chan presents itself as an unsolved murder using the internet as a medium, it is a reminder that the internet holds dark and forbidden secrets. While Alex from 4chan might have been fake, the footnote it has left on the internet mystery communities all over the internet will always be felt, as people still debate the authenticity of this story. The internet is a scary and reckless place, and perhaps still holds more mysteries than we could ever fathom. Now again, that is going to be it for me today on this episode of Unblurring the Unknown. I'm trying to get really better about my endings. We're kind of really ending them on a nice, solid note. Not a cliffhanger, but a little bit more suspense. I'm trying to work on that. Trying to work on my storytelling abilities. And I hope you all appreciate it. But with that being said, feel free to let me know about what you personally believe when it comes to the story of Alex from 4chan. Do you believe that Alex was a real person? Do you believe that this could have been made up? Do you think this could have been a prank? Do you think this could have been an ARG? Please let me know. Of course, I let you know my personal theories about this case, and feel free to let me know in the comment sections and things like that. Now, if you happen to enjoy the show and you enjoy the content that I do, again, I spoke it at the top of the show, please feel free to share this with friends, family, coworkers, anybody else you think might be interested in this type of content. I greatly appreciate it, trying to expand my reach to as many people as possible who like this stuff just as much as I do. And again, I appreciate all the support. But again, that is going to do it on this week's episode over the mystery and the vanishing of Alex from 4chan. And I will see you all on the next one.